we have, and I have, unequivocally condemned Hamas and the Palestinian factions that were responsible for killing 2 Israeli soldiers and abducting a third almost minutes after a ceasefire had been announced. And the UN has condemned them as well. And I want to make sure that they are listening. If they are serious about trying to resolve this situation, that soldier needs to be unconditionally released as soon as possible. I have been very clear throughout this crisis that Israel has a right to defend itself. No country can tolerate missiles raining down on its cities and people having to rush to bomb shelters every 20 minutes or half hour. No country can or would tolerate tunnels being dug under their land that can be used to launch terrorist attacks. Now, at the same time, we've also been clear that innocent civilians in Gaza caught in the crossfire have to weigh on our conscience, and we have to do more to protect them. A ceasefire was one way in which we could stop the killing, to stop.
Joined by Dr. Rania Masri, who is a human rights advocate, and she's joining us live via Skype from North Carolina. Dr. Masri, thanks very much for joining us here on Press TV. Now, when we're talking about this Israeli soldier who's been captured, the White House has come out quite strongly and has condemned it and has called it Hamas's attack on Israeli soldiers, and has called that attack, quote unquote, on these Israeli soldiers as a barbaric violation of the ceasefire. Now, in context of all that's happening in Gaza, how do you feel about that statement?
Well, I feel that the White House spokesperson and others in the White House should review their English language and review. Number one, they called it a kidnapping. And we need to recognize that the Israeli army is an invading army, an occupying army. So it cannot be called a kidnapping. It is called a capture. And if we're going to refer to it as barbarous, then we really need to look at the language. The barbarous action that has been happening, the really criminal action, is fully at the responsibility of the Israeli government and the Israeli army that has been supported funding-wise and diplomatically by the United States. And I find it quite ironic that on one hand, President Obama says, and I quote, that he's deeply concerned, gravely concerned about the loss of civilian life. And at the same time, they continue to fund the Israeli war machine. So it's an odd way of being concerned about the loss of life.
Indeed, and let me
step back and to try to resolve some of the underlying issues that have been building up over quite some time. I think it's going to be very hard to put a ceasefire back together again if Israelis and the international community can't feel confident that Hamas can follow through. I'm in constant consultation with Prime Minister Netanyahu. Our national security team is in constant communication with the Israeli military. I want to see everything possible done to make sure that Palestinian civilians are not being killed. And it is heartbreaking to see what's happening there. We have, and I have.
Thanks very much for staying with us here on Press TV as we continue to take a closer look at the continuing Israeli aggression on the Gaza Strip. We're now joined by our correspondent Akram al-Satari, who is joining us live now from Gaza itself to get the latest on the situation there on the ground. Akram, what is the latest?
Well, heavy bombardments all over the Gaza, all over the Rafah city. Israeli occupation forces are trying to target any car that is trying to leave the Rafah area. It looks like they are on high alert, trying to intercept any possible attempt for moving the captive Israeli soldier from the Rafah area into any other area. The cabinet convened and they stated they will turn every stone in the Gaza Strip in order to find the captive Israeli soldier. And now the Palestinians are just proud and are saying that Israel has not spared any effort targeting them, killing them, spreading the death into the streets and the houses and to allies of the Gaza Strip. And Israel has nothing more that they can do in order to bring more suffering for the Palestinians. Israel targeted, as you might know, targeted an ambulance earlier, 2 hours ago, killing 3 paramedics while they were trying to save some of the injured people in the Rafah area. They also targeted 1 car and also 1 motorcycle in the area. There is a large-scale targeting. Every moving vehicle is being targeted in Rafah now, and Israel is threatening of occupying the whole Rafah city in order to find the Israeli captive soldier.
And Akram, when we were speaking to her earlier as well, we also heard about the situation at the Al-Shifa hospital and the evacuation that was taking place there. Tell us a bit more about that and where the patients have gone at this time.
I was there and I saw the people running outside the hospital, taking the medical beds of their dears, and also taking some people on their wheelchairs, running out of the building. They said they received phone calls and text messages asking them to evacuate the building, and there is some information about the Al-Shifa administration receiving a request for evacuating the building. This building is one of the main buildings of Al-Shifa Hospital, is the cardiac surgery department. The building was newly handed over to Al-Shifa Hospital but after it was built, and now they're asked to evacuate the building, and people are moved. I would say the patients are moved now from that department into some other departments, and with the 100 full occupancy rate of the whole beds, you can imagine how congested the hospital can be and the crowded people, and how can they cope with that. So Israel is not only targeting Palestinians in their house, in the streets, in the schools, in the mosques, in the public facilities, but is also now chasing them into the hospitals where they are hoping they would be recovering from their injuries, and threatening them with the death, the imminent death that they are spreading through their unmanned drones and war jets. So situation is dire. The Al-Shifa hospital management is at high alert. They're trying to understand exactly what's happening. They are trying to assess whether that was a rumor or something that they can count on. But the fact that we all know now that the department is fully evacuated, and the staff is also withdrawn from the building, and we are all waiting for the coming minutes or hours to know what would be happening to that department and to that building.
Okay, Akram, as always, thanks very much for that detailed update. That was Akram Al-Satari, Press TV's correspondent, who was speaking to us live from Gaza itself.